Regardless of who wins in the US elections, China will be one of America's biggest foreign policy challenges going forward. How would a Biden presidency take this on?
There'll be a return to somewhat more conventional policy making. Not that he'll necessarily take a softer line when it comes to China. I think that the old era of engagement is dead and gone. At the same time, though, his personal style, his approach to the world is quite different than that of President Trump. I believe then that he would turn first to trying to strengthen America, to bring America out of the devastation that's been caused by the pandemic, the economic decline that has been caused by the pandemic, the current challenges of racial injustice. So really kind of putting America back onto the right footing, and at the same time externally reaching back out to allies that have been kind of the foundation of American foreign policy, really going back to the end of World War II, and developing a coalition to work together to further American interests, not so much in the direction of creating conflict with China, but to put China on notice that there are certain core interests that America has both at home and abroad.
What do we know specifically about Biden's proposed policy towards China?
Haven't heard a great deal in terms of specifics of what Biden would do. He does have a long track record in office, obviously, and probably in terms of foreign policy, most prominently during his 8 years as vice president under President Obama. And during that time, again, I think what we've seen in his approach to the world is a kind of conventional realist take on things. In other words, countries have their own interests, they're competitive, but there's room through diplomacy, through negotiations to avoid outright conflict.
Some commentators and closest to the Biden campaign say that a Cold War is unlikely because US-China decoupling is just impossible. What do you make of that?
Despite everything which has happened over the past 4 years, America and China still have a deep economic relationship. It's been challenged by the trade war. There are real questions about the extent to which the Phase 1 agreement, which was reached really on the eve of the pandemic, about how that will be applied and the degree to which there'll be compliance by both sides of that agreement. But that level of the economic relationship stands as a real counterpoint to any aspect of that older Cold War relationship.
When Biden was vice president, he met Xi Jinping a couple of times. They dined in private on many occasions. If Biden becomes president, how do you see this relationship going forward?
There has been a discussion about this series of meetings which took place between Biden and Xi Jinping when he was still vice president. And there's a lot of speculation about whether that might frame the relationship moving forward. The more I think about it, though, it's important to realize that Biden on China will be boxed in a lot of ways by changes in American domestic politics. Whatever coalition had existed that favored engagement with China has really evaporated under a host of different variables and factors. And so I think that Biden will approach the relationship in a more professional manner than the current administration. There'll be less emotion, certainly less tweeting, more consultation with experts, more dependence on the State Department. I think the personal relationship, in truth, will probably fall out of the dynamic between the two countries. And that probably will be productive just in terms of creating more regularity and normality in the relationship. If not more cooperation, then more predictability. And that, I think, is promising both for American interest and frankly, I think for China as well.
Who do you think China wants to win in the next US election?
Most of it's focused on speculation about what's going on in the halls of power in Beijing. But in truth, I think the answer depends on what it is that Xi Jinping wants from the world. Is he content for China to continue to exist within a system in which the United States is playing a leading role? Or does he have aspirations to revise the existing international order in a way that's more consistent with China being on the top? Then in some ways, frankly, Trump and the dysfunction of Trump's approach to American politics and to global politics would serve the interests of the Chinese state that's looking to be a world leader, more so than Biden. So while on the surface, it might appear that Biden would be an easier counterpart for China to deal with, in truth, if China is looking to change the world, then the continued ruination of America under a second term of President Trump might very well serve those interests quite well.
Sounds like a continuation of dialogue is needed through times like these. Professor Alan Carlson from Cornell University, thank you for your insight on US-China relations.
It was my pleasure. Thank you very much.